you have to be able to close for that compensation and demonstrate your value.
Yes. If you want somebody to say, yes, I'm willing to pay you, they're willing to pay a trusted guide. Real estate agents, welcome to the webinar. Come with me if you want to live. We're gonna have some fun today, really talking about some potentially heavy things, but making sure that you have all the actionable items you need to just crush 2024. And we're gonna jump right into it. I want to introduce my co-host, Jake Bartlett. Jake, tell us a little bit about yourself as we get going.
Yeah, so I'm a father of 3, husband to my wife, Christina. Been in the real estate business for 17 years, college golfer, avid golfer still. I hunt, and I'm the agent advisor, assistant team lead for the Coeur d'Alene Spokane offices of RMG, as well as the co-host of the RMG Agent Podcast.
Yes, we have a lot of fun on the podcast. You can always find us at rmgagentpodcast.com or just go to any of the places that you listen or watch podcasts. My name is Reed Moore, and I'm your host here today. Also, wanted just to let you know I've been in the industry for 22 years now, have had the privilege of being involved with over $1.5 billion in residential resale, and have the ability to partner up with some amazing people in our company, RMG, including Jake, as well as our other leaders in Alaska, as well as the inland Northwest, including Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, Wasilla, and Anchorage, Alaska. So we're thrilled to be here with you guys today, and we're really going to be sharing some things that we are sharing with our company to really get them tooled up to be able to thrive in 2024 and beyond, as there are some definite changes that are now hitting and will be hitting our industry over the next several years. So just to kind of paint the picture here today of what we're going to be going over, we're going to be talking a little bit about the ghosts of real estate past. We're going to do maybe a 10-minute history lesson.
Yep. We're going to go to the past so we can know where we're going.
Yes. We're going to talk about what's really happening. We're going to work on getting beyond kind of the highlights and the drama that's in the media around real estate to maybe what you actually need to know as a real estate sales practitioner. And then we're going to get on to your agent action plan. So stick around to the end. We're going to be ripping and tearing to get through this in 45 minutes. But the last bit of this is going to be things that you can control and highly actionable items.
Also, just as a side note here, we are going to rip through it with no questions. So if you do have comments about wanting to get slides or the action guide after this, that will be available on the website. Yeah,
this webinar will be available on the website, as well as, like Jake said, the action guide and everything. So we do want you guys to take notes if you want, but just know that if you miss anything, it's going to be there for you to review. Okay, so this slide is just a real quick reminder that we want you to maybe kind of set your preconceived ideas of what will happen or what's going to change or not change aside for this purpose of this webinar. We find ourselves in 2023 and 2024 pretty quickly and easily in an echo chamber. And so if you've already built your talking points as to why things are good or bad or evil or whatever, there's a good chance that some of that is it's irrelevant. And we want to just be clear on this webinar, we're not advocating for change in our industry or not change in our industry. We want you to maybe take a different perspective that can help keep you from getting blindsided.
Yeah, so the rules of the game or the game that you're playing, they're not the old rules, they're not the new rules, they're the rules you have for moving forward today.
Yeah, that's right. So it's story time. It's story time. So here we go. So one of the things that's been sensationalized and is absolutely of massive importance and consideration in our industry are these huge lawsuits that have happened.
Right. Yep. Have big, drastic, or maybe not drastic impact on our industry.
Yeah, so these are class action lawsuits, and the biggest thing about this, of course, is the huge amount of money that it represents. So Sitzer Burnett is the one that really shocked everybody last year, coming out with over $5.3 billion of damages. But these other class action lawsuits that are just the beginning of maybe even dozens or hundreds of class action lawsuits. They have the potential of being upwards of $400 billion in nationwide damages. That's something like 4 to 8 times what our entire industry brings in top line revenue over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of money, right?
So you don't have the money to pay that?
Yeah, no, I don't have the money to pay that. But here's the thing. For us today, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. This really has an impact. It really is something that you should be paying attention to, especially if you're at the brokerage level. But we're concerned about some other things that I would say aren't likely things, this is going to happen.
I think it's good information to stay up to date with because you will have clients that will ask you about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to be focusing on 3 actors or 3 dancers that have been dancing now for what, 80 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little over that.
So the first of the actors we're going to talk about today to paint the context is the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice, whether you like them, don't like them, have had good experiences with them, or don't know anything about them, their job in our country is to protect consumers against several things. One is antitrust behavior. Another one would be anti-competitive behavior. And then the other one would just be flat out things that are illegal.
Yep.
Right. So the DOJ is they're one of the actors in this drama, and then as of kind of this go around, the Federal Trade Commission, the current administration has kind of added them into the mix, and they closely monitor industries like ours, and they really work hand in hand with the DOJ to be able to make sure that there's fair competition happening across different industries.
Yep, there to make sure that the compliance is being happening, and they're really the DOJ's partner in this.
Yeah, that's right. So now on the other side of the dance floor, we have the National Association of Realtors. Now, you could kind of use NAR in this case as a placeholder for all of us who are in the industry, but NAR is, of course, the biggest single kind of point of consolidation in our industry. So NAR started in 1908. Some of the reasons NAR started were because of really bad actors in the real estate space, but they had this mission statement originally, and I want to read it real quick because I think it helps paint some of the context of what we're going to be talking about. So the original mission statement of NAR was to unite the real estate men of America for the purpose of effectively exerting a combined influence on matters affecting real estate interests.
Yep, sounds an awful lot like a union.
It sounds a lot like a union. In fact, this would be a traditional union if it was laborers or realtors or real estate agents and a company on the other side. The issue, of course, is that we have realtors and real estate professionals and consumers on the other side. So when you put consumers on the other side of maybe a statement like this, you have antitrust.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So now this is not how, this was the original mission. Of course, a lot has changed in NAR, but just kind of painting a picture, this is how we get started and how we end up in this timeline of events where the DOJ especially and NAR start dancing. So the dance starts in 1940 with commission fee structures, then sub-agency virtual office websites, the DOJ and NAR dissent decree, and then to now, which is the participation rule and cooperative compensation coming under scrutiny. So let's just kind of walk through these, Jake.
Yep. All right. So in 1940 to 1970, we've got the commission fee schedule. And what that actually means is that the NAR fixed commissions at 6%.
Right.
And so we had that fixed rate, and that outcome led to antitrust lawsuits through the DOJ and banning fee schedules.
Yeah, so a little bit of like context of what was going on in the country. So during this period of time, NAR has a good amount of power, and they just say, hey, it's 6%. Right, regardless of what's going on, that's the deal. The other thing that was happening is this is the beginning. It's not the beginning, but sub-agency, which we'll get to in a second, was a part of this time. But what happens kind of historically is when the DOJ gets involved or when things really change, it's not really when things need to change, it's when it affects enough people or has enough of an impact on society to finally warrant the focus that is required to be able to produce the change. So then the question is, 1940 to 1970, what is going on in the country that causes this to happen? And there's a few things. So the biggest one is if you go before World War II, there were about 300,000 home starts across the entire country. And if you were going to be a homeowner, you had to come to the table with a down payment of roughly 50%. So if you look at home ownership, right, and you, like what was the original American dream of home ownership, you have the situation where you have very few people and later in life that could actually afford a home. Well, all of a sudden, all the conquering heroes come back from World War II, and our country wants to say thank you for their service, for their sacrifice. And now you have this huge influx of people who had the opportunity to get the GI Bill and to be able to buy houses for very, very little down. Can you imagine going from 50% down to all the way down to, 5%, 3%, 0%, somewhere in there?
Right.
Like
drastically different.
Changes everything.
Yeah.
In fact, it changed so much that the industry went from 300,000 home starts to 1.7 million plus home starts into the 50s, just a decade and a half later. So if we look at that, we don't have the numbers don't exist to know how many home sales happened. But if you can look at that and you can say that the real estate industry over the course of 20 years, went up by what, 6 or 7 times maybe the size that it was previously. So you have all of a sudden our industry goes from being kind of a small sideline industry compared to maybe oil and steel and other industries at the time to now our industry impacts a huge number of people. And so when you start impacting more people, the practices that show up, in this case, antitrust, anti-competitive behavior, start to show up in the mainstream. The DOJ steps in and starts the dance and says, hey, you got to cut it out. You can't do business like this anymore.
Yeah, the other thing that happens is gigantic economic growth through the home ownership that we all know now is being a driver for your wealth, right? So
yeah, you have huge economic growth just in the country as well as through real estate with this. You have a baby boom, right? So all of a sudden the population growth skyrockets. You have suburbanization during this time, massive, massive changes. And of course, this now leads us to the next period of time.
Yeah, so 80s and 90s, we've got sub-agency where if you've never heard this, if you're newer in the industry, you might not quite understand this, but all brokers actually represented the sellers. Even the agent that brought the buyer represented the seller as a fiduciary. Yeah. So scrutiny on that collapses the sub-agency system, and exclusive buyers representations start, and you get organizations like NABA, National Association of Exclusive Buyers Agents, which I actually used to be a part of, and you get exclusive buyers brokerages start popping up.
Yeah, so you see people who've been around for a while and they talk about working for an exclusive buyer agency, or they started that and it was revolutionary, it's bleeding edge. That's because this is the time period that started happening. So the DOJ comes along and says, hey, cut it out, you guys can't fix your fee structures. But then the practice of everybody being a fiduciary to the seller and causing the buyer to have no representation in the entire real estate profession, right? That all of a sudden is another thing that comes to light, and this change starts to get forced. And of course, there were things happening at the national level that make this the timing for this to start shaking up. Part of this was that there was a savings, it was called the savings and loan crisis. And in broad strokes, the saving and loan crisis was this idea that people were entrusted with savings and loans of the average consumer, and they made bad choices. And all of a sudden, this group of people that, or the banks, the financial institutions that were supposed to be fiduciaries to the money and deeply, deeply trusted, were all of a sudden not found to be trustworthy.
Right.
Massive breach in consumer confidence and everything. So now you have the DOJ looking at real estate and saying, hey, we're here to protect consumers from, could say like predatory type behavior. And then they look at this and they see that we as real estate professionals don't have anybody who is representing the best interests of the buyer.
Anybody's the fiduciary to the buyer.
That's right. So now it's time to enforce change again.
All right, we're into the early 2000s. You've got the virtual office websites, and this is when NAR starts to try to block online listings, right? So you've got the first, and the listings online were not the same as we think of now. Like the data was pretty crude,
yes,
but there was access for the consumers to be able to look at homes, right?
Yeah.
And so NAR puts a block to that, and the DOJ comes in and bans the practice of withholding the listings from the online competitors.
Yeah, and I remember, so I was doing real estate in this period of time, and real estate agents lost their mind over this. And it's interesting because looking back, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely antitrust, anti-competitive, right? I mean, this is definitely not good behavior. But if you think about it from the standpoint of, say, NAR, where their constituency, right, the people who subscribe to them are stick and brick brokerages and real estate professionals who all wake up one day and realize realize I've been the gatekeeper of all this information. This is how I've provided value to the consumer, and I can no longer do that if this practice is allowed. So then I go to my union and I say, hey, look, these guys over here aren't playing fair. They're creating a different environment for all of us, which is good and competitive, but that's not the way that I see it. And so all of a sudden this happens in the early 2000s. And again, the dance continues and the DOJ jumps in and starts enforcing, change. Right?
Enforcing change, yep. And those that refuse to change are no longer in the industry.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So now we're into 2008 to 2018. The DOJ and NRR come to an agreement to cease the lawsuits or stop scrutiny for a 10-year period.
Yes.
And then as soon as that 10-year period is over, the DOJ promptly starts suing NAR.
That's right. That's right. So everybody goes back to their corners. Everybody goes back to their side of the dance, just like a junior high dance. And there's a 10-year kind of a moratorium where the DOJ says, all right, stop. And there's some real practical reasons that this happened. One of the practical reasons is that the DOJ had to see if the things that they put into place were actually going to change the industry. And then, of course, NAR had needed the time to be able to adopt these different changes and change their behavior. But on the national scale, if you think about 2008 through 2018, from the perspective of the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, not a good time to try to figure out who to focus on, because you had the Great Recession, you have financial institutions who have been doing some pretty bad things, you have technology, you have healthcare, you have telecommunications, you have all kinds of industries.
You have war.
Yeah, you just have so many things all happening in this period of time where NAR and the real estate profession, quite frankly, becomes a very, very small fish in a very, very, very big pond. So this 10-year moratorium, none of us really remembered, because it's like, okay, everybody's done fighting. But the reality is as soon as this period of time was up, we're back at it.
We get back at it, and now we get into the participation rule and a cooperative compensation. So these are all the lawsuits that we think of now.
That's right. So in September 5th, 2020, the DOJ comes back to the table, files a lawsuit, and says, we are not happy with your practices still around VOWs. We're not happy with your cooperative compensation agreements, and we're not happy about really anti-competitive behavior that we think could cause consumers to have to pay more for real estate services.
Yep. So consumer is the forefront. If we look at this as like, I like your corner analogy, right? Like the NAR is fighting on our behalf and the DOJ and the FTC are fighting on the consumer's behalf is the theory. But we could end up in these situations where the outcomes don't seem right to us because we always think of ourselves as the fiduciary and we've never done anything wrong, right?
Yeah. And that's, looking back at all of these changes, some of them right now they're just so obvious. And I remember just the couple that I was a part of, like they didn't seem that obvious at the time. So we have to be careful of that. And this is where, the echo chamber starts. I see some very, very clear ways that consumers could lose, right? And just again, if you think about what antitrust is, antitrust refers to the regulation of the concentration of economic power, particularly regarding to monopolies and other anti-competitive practices. It's possible for something to be antitrust behavior in the eyes of the DOJ and still be better for the consumer. And so that's the issue, right? Is nobody has a crystal ball. We as real estate agents are pretty clear that we know what's best for the consumer, and it's what we do, right? Like we serve consumers. But we just want to be clear that the DOJ probably feels equally as clear as to the reasons that they're going about this. But either way, one of the things that's really important to understand for this webinar is the DOJ has come out and said, we are committed to enforcing change in real estate.
Yep.
This is different than the class action lawsuits, and this is the reason for this webinar, because you have to be prepared not for what's going on with those lawsuits, but with these ones. So potential outcomes.
Yeah. So first and foremost, here in Washington, we're already seeing some of these happening, or we've seen them happen over the last year. The first one is the mandatory buyer's representation agreements.
Yep.
That rolled out January 1st. And I've been a part of quite a few meetings about that and seeing like that echo chamber play out.
So are agents already losing their mind over this?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Even that minuscule change of like a mandatory buyer's representation agreement. So
yeah.
Listing forms disclosing listing agents' commissions on what is offered. We're also seeing buyers' agents' commission being disclosed as well on websites and everything, right? Like transparency is being enforced at the highest level.
Yes. So if you look at this, our business practices already align with this. Washington State and several other states already align with this. And so there can be this feeling of like, okay, that's all that's really going to happen. But you have to understand that the DOJ doesn't see this, and they're not articulating this as the change that they want to see. And that's really important to understand, that this is not necessarily what they're asking for. And so I want to frame this as not what's good or bad, but what's easier and harder. So the easiest change we're going to see are changes like this. So if you've already had good business practices, like making sure everybody you work with is in contract and has clear expectations set from a consultation, yay, high five. If you haven't, this is going to be the minimum that I'm hard pressed to see that this is the kind of the end of it, right? So if we go and there's kind of a continuum, we go all the way to what could be hardest. Now we start ending up in this new world of real estate that we all should be prepared for, because again, this is not popular opinion. This is not about the class action lawsuits. This is about the Department of Justice having their way. And they've been dancing now for 80 years, and they have continued to get their way towards more and more competitive type behaviors, right? Yep. So that looks like listing brokerage sharing their commissions with the buy side becomes illegal. Not optional, not like it's no longer common practice, but it's actually no longer can it happen. And then secondly, buyer's agents only get paid by their clients or their clients' financing. So another way of looking at it would be something like this.
Yep, so seller only negotiates to pay their agent. Yes. And then buyer's agent negotiates to get their commission from their buyer. If some of you haven't sat down and really thought through this and you're seeing this for the first time, this is going to be a shock.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you see this and your first reaction is like, that's horrible, that's like, nobody cares. Yeah. But it's like, love you. Sorry, like we're here doing this for people in our industry, but nobody cares.
Yeah, right? Department of Justice wakes up tomorrow and says this is the playing field. You can't fight this.
Yeah. So these things, what will happen, of course, consumer experience will rebalance and we'll figure it all out. But this could be detrimental to a good portion of people in our industry if they choose not to change. That's the big takeaway, right? So agent commissions are no longer published in the MLS. Sellers agents no longer can share commission with the buyer's agents, right? So this now completely separates out working with sellers, working with buyers, and all the compensation, and all the way down to what a title company is allowed to do and not do. Yep. Okay. So this is a really significant change. And if you are somebody who works right now exclusively on listing properties, you have built the core competency that we feel like everybody in our industry is going to need, and you really have an advantage moving into this next season. If you work with buyers and sellers or exclusively with buyers, there are some skill sets that you may or may not have honed that are going to be crucial moving forward, whether you feel behaviorally like aligned with it or not.
Right. Yeah. If you are, if you love working with clients and helping clients, and you just you're afraid to ask for what's best for you up front, this is going to be hard.
It's going to be rough. So we want to give you guys kind of a playbook, and we want to give you some simple rules or things to follow that we think are going to be very, very helpful just for some mental framework for how you're going to be able to build the skill set. So we're going to focus now on what you can control in your business to be able to be prepared for this. Because remember, when things change, there's a period of time where you have to survive. And then coming out of that, there's a period of time where you get to thrive. And that's what we want for everybody who's watching this webinar.
Yeah. The one thing that you said that is the perfect, you focus on what you can control. All this other stuff, you can't control, but you can control this. So yes. Focus your time and energy on this.
Yes. So the one skill that you have to master, if you haven't mastered it, not only just mastering the skill, but mastering it across all of the different pieces and parts of our industry, is you have to learn how to close for compensation. How does that differ from what somebody who's working with buyers and sellers right now might do?
For a seller, it's going to be very, somebody that works with the listings a lot and has to have that conversation of what they're going to get paid and how they're going to sell their house is not going to be any different. But on the buy side, sitting down and asking that buyer like how I'm going to get paid if the seller doesn't offer me commissions, which just rolled out.
Or the seller is no longer allowed.
Or yeah,
right.
Good point. Yeah, you have to be able to close for that compensation and demonstrate your value.
Yes. So let's just walk through that. So the key thing that I want you to write down, I want you to think about is if you service buyers at any level, you're going to have to learn how to close for your own compensation, and it is a different skill set. The way that we get there is we have to become the trusted guide. If you want to close for compensation, if you want somebody to say, yes, I'm willing to pay you, they're willing to pay a trusted guide. And we talked, in the podcast, we talked about this idea of a Sherpa.
Yep.
Right. So if I'm climbing Everest or I'm doing something that has a degree of risk, I want a trusted guide along my side, and I'm going to be willing to pay that trusted guide. So if I'm going to close for compensation, I need to be the trusted guide. In order to be the trusted guide,
you got to demonstrate your value. And the way I would look at this is striving to give an exceptional experience that the client can't do without you, and being able to show that up front on how you're going to do it, and then deliver it time and time again.
Yes. So you're going to hear this a lot this year. You're going to hear a lot of conversations around value. And we think that you're going to hear this three ways. One is you're going to hear know your value.
Yep.
Right? I've already heard it a lot. People say, know your value. Make sure you know your value. I think that's really important because there's part of your mindset that has to be, you have to be all in on understanding that you have value, because if you start flinching around that, like that's where becoming the trusted guide and closing for compensation just starts to erode right out of the gate. But I don't think it's enough to know your value, and I don't know that that's even particularly all that helpful. The next thing you're going to hear, I think, is articulate your value. You need to be willing and be able to articulate your value. And again, I think that that's important. But when Jake and I were building this out, we realized we need to be able to demonstrate our value. Because if you can demonstrate it, it means that you believe in it. It means that you can articulate it, but it goes beyond that to the place where I can actually show you that I'm going to be valuable in this real estate transaction and in your real estate investing future.
Yep.
Okay. So here's maybe a way of thinking about this or saying it.
Close for compensation by being the trusted guide through demonstrating your value.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so this is where, guys, we want you to now start thinking about where are there holes in my game? Where are there areas for me to improve? And by the way, if you're a solo agent, there's going to be a lot here, and this is going to be great. If you happen to work inside of a team or an organization, there's going to be this camaraderie. There's going to be people that are better at different parts of this that you get to tap into. Yep. If you're somebody watching this and you lead a team, this is going to be really a way of you thinking through what are you training your agents on, and how are you looking for gaps, and how are you filling those gaps with different people that need different levels of support. So the trusted guide model is that we think that there are three different areas that you need to grow and continue to develop. I need to, Jake needs to, in order to be the trusted guide. And that is in our area of our knowledge, the area of our access, and ultimately us being able to apply our knowledge and our access to the individual client's circumstance.
Yep.
Right?
So here's the four areas of knowledge that you need to be able to show to your client. The first is your client knowledge.
Yes.
Your market knowledge, location, and then inventory knowledge.
That's right. So let's break this down. So we look at our client knowledge. Depending on where you've been in the past with how hard or how easy the market has been, and the fact that you haven't had to close for compensation in working with buyers specifically, means that you haven't necessarily had to have the level of client knowledge that we are going to be encouraging you to have in the future. By the way, if you work with listings, you can, through your skill set, kind of get around working, being excellent at client knowledge, but don't ever think the fact that you're not excellent at connecting with and understanding your client deeply, you don't ever think that that's a strength, right? This is always an area that we can improve. If you happen to do business with your network, right? So you call that a sphere of influence, we call it our network. This is a massive advantage, because if we look at our client knowledge as the base of our knowledge, and I happen to work with, 60, 70, 80% of my clients are repeat and referral clients, man, like the level of knowledge that I'm already operating with is just tremendous.
Yeah, and it comes back to that trusted guide. They already know and trust you as the client knowledge that you've given them in the past, right?
Yes.
And how you used that and how you were able to best suit them through that process.
Yeah, so ask yourself the question, what books are you reading and what things are you doing to really deeply get to understand the people that you're serving and broadening your ability with your network as well as with people who you don't know yet, your ability to quickly get into rapport and then build your basis of knowledge around what they need, because this is going to work in the area of application especially.
All right, so now market knowledge. So understanding the local conditions and understanding maybe intricate little markets, right? And not just like the overall national market, and understanding the national and the local and the neighborhood down to that house knowledge, right?
Yeah, if the hardest things that could come out of this happen, there's a good chance that our industry drops as far as agent population by 30% or more, which is pretty tremendous. Mm-hmm. But think about what that does for you as somebody who's going to survive and then thrive. Right, that makes for unbelievable opportunity, because our baseline of home sales yearly is like around 4 million. Mm-hmm. So if the agent population goes down by 30 or 50%, this is an unbelievable opportunity, right? But the way that we treat it, those who survive, those who thrive, we are going to operate at a much higher level of professionalism. And I want you to take a look at this, because you probably can check all these things off. Okay, I have some understanding of all this. But do you have a deep understanding of these things? Have you spent time like a professional, like you would expect your doctor to, when it comes to a diagnosis around these market knowledge things? This might be something that's in your wheelhouse, right? Which is awesome. This might be something that gives you a lot of anxiety. Figure out what you can do to get more knowledge around the market.
Yeah, so one thing I'll add to that is that, the hours to become a realtor might not have changed, but the bar of entry to actually be a professional within the industry has changed.
It has, and it's going to change even more. It's going way up.
It's going way up. Yeah. Which is a good thing for those that are willing to do the work.
It is. So talk to us about location.
Yeah, so location, being that local expert and really being able to articulate different areas within whatever markets that you're serving at a local micro level, right? That's going to be really important to clients, especially if you work with clients that are moving from out of town.
Yeah, this is something that over the course of the last 5-6 years, with just the absolute speed of the market, a lot of real estate agents haven't spent a lot of time doing. The way that we used to do this, of course, is if you didn't have clients on a Tuesday, what did you do in the afternoon?
You previewed homes.
You previewed homes. You went and you looked at the inventory. The difference between somebody who's an agent who sees something online just like the consumer and the agent who actually goes, feels out the neighborhood, looks in the crawl space, walks the home. Over the course of time, not talk about one house, but over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, a career, the gap between those agents is unbelievable, right? The new gap between those agents may be, I make a great living or I go do something else.
Yeah, so one of the ways that I used to do this was for open houses, I would find out like the 5 or 6 closest houses.
Yes.
That were for sale. And when I'm talking with the clients or people that are walking through, I'm demonstrating my local knowledge by being able to tell them about the other houses in the neighborhood and then schedule appointments from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you guys see things on here like safety and crime rate, neighborhood characteristics. If your little things going like, I don't know if I can talk about that. We're not talking about anything. We're talking about knowing.
Yep.
Right? We're talking about your knowledge base. Okay, what else?
So we've got inventory, so knowing every single aspect of that inventory. And this isn't just watching the hot sheet daily, right?
This is your previews. This is talking to contractors, asking them what's coming where, knowing the future of different areas of town, all of those things.
Yeah, you used one on the podcast, an example of this, where you had an agent when you moved here.
Yeah.
That told you about like the snow removal, or you give the example what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there was a house that my wife and I were thinking about buying, and because of his not just area knowledge, but his inventory knowledge, he knew all of the things that we might struggle with having moved from Alaska, wanting to escape an extended winter, and it really saved us buying a house that we wouldn't have been happy with. So what about this one? So we're moving now from knowledge to the next one, which is access.
Yep. Access. And so we're not talking about actually opening doors for somebody, right?
No.
So like In Spokane here, we just got new lock boxes that I can send a client a code that opens it for them, one-time use, and I don't even have to be there if I had the seller's permission. So I'm not talking about opening the door.
No.
I'm talking about the access to my connections, my relationships, and my network of people.
Yeah, guys, this is something that can be hard to articulate the value of, and I want to try to do a good job for you. The more connected that you are, you hear people say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually how the world works. And if you, as a real estate professional, have not just built that first layer of, a great lender, a great title company, a great home inspector, and, knowing an appraiser that you can call and ask questions of, like that's the very, very first layer of maybe 10 different layers of relationships. And so when somebody comes to work with you and your job is to be the trusted guide and to demonstrate your value so you can close for compensation, your entire Rolodex coming to bear on that client's needs is an absolute gift. It is something that is mind-blowing how valuable and how important it is.
Yeah, so if you want to think about this in the best example I could give you is if you were to go travel from here to Coeur d'Alene, it's 45 minutes and you're going to stay the night one night, like you're going to book that trip yourself.
Yeah.
If you're going to go from here to the Bahamas, you're going to call a travel agent. Sure. Because they have the local connections and relationships to be able to make that an exceptional experience for you.
Yeah, so if you have somebody who's newer in their home buying and selling experience and you show up, you have the ability to really provide a lot of value yourself. You have somebody that's more experienced, now you have to provide a bigger experience and a better experience for them. And part of the way that you do that is you bring all of your access into the transaction.
Yep. And then the other avenue in the access is your lead generation. So you're going to demonstrate this through the way that you're connecting with them, the way that you're setting appointments, and if it's a new person, it's not a referral from somebody, where did you get them from? How hard were you working on that? And then also lead generating for their business, right?
That's right.
Like we do that as in our office, is that when you have a certain number of people that you're going to be starting to lead generate just specifically to service those buyers.
That's right. So I want you guys, the conversation in real estate always comes back to lead generation, but I want you guys to not just think about it as getting business, which is like, that's the thing you got to do, but people who lead generate effectively and over many, many, many years, and the word's effectively, right? If you do quantity and quality when it comes to your lead generation, you have more access. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, access to relationships, access to other services have to do with you picking up the phone, knocking on a door, shaking hands, meeting people, so that you can have access as well as have more people service, right?
Yeah, let's paint a little bit of a picture here, right? Like who's called FSBOs? Most agents have, or at least they've thought about it. If you've got a buyer and now we're in a playing field where you've already pre-negotiated your commission with them, and now the DOJ said that you can't get the commission from the seller, you can call that FSBO and tell them, I've got a buyer, and it's not going to be, you're not going to have to pay me because my client's already paying me.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots and lots of different areas that lead generation access overlap. Okay, so let's talk about, this is where it all comes to a head. You can have all the knowledge, you can have all the access, but you have to be able to apply those things to your client's specific situation. So what does that look like?
So this is going to be the negotiation skills, the showings, the previewing, the really delivering that client experience for them.
Yeah, so if I've done a great job with my client knowledge, I have listened deeply to who this client is and understood what motivates them, what they need, this is going to apply. And the reason we think that one of the big application areas is negotiations, is when we think negotiation, if we think I'm going to help you get more or less out of a house, like that's great, yes. Mm-hmm. But that is the surface level of negotiation, because kind of the heartbeat of great application in negotiation is what is valuable to my client that the other party doesn't care about, mm-hmm. and what is valuable to the other party that my client doesn't care about. Mm-hmm. What can we do to actually facilitate deep levels of negotiation around all the different elements that happen to go into a transaction? Because it's not just about that top line dollar. There are so much more. And when you have your client knowledge and now you know how to apply it through negotiations, you're going to serve your clients way better.
Yeah, and you're going to get them houses that they want faster, easier, save them time, get it for the prices and the things negotiated that they actually care about.
Yeah, that's right. So application also is perspective, right?
Yeah, keeping perspective within their needs, their wants, the time in the market, the knowledge that you have about other things that are happening, and keeping all of that perspective forefront for them.
Yeah, so if I build my knowledge base and I have my access ready to go for a client, now I am the person who is in this transaction not getting emotionally charged, not forgetting the big picture, not forgetting the superordinate goal, right? Does the buyer want to buy? Does the seller want to sell? Right? All of that perspective comes to bear on the trusted guide. So if you think about the Everest situation, right? And you have a climber and they're going up and all of a sudden things start getting a little dicey and they look over the Sherpa and the Sherpa's there and they're calm and they say something to the effect of, trust me, this is normal, we're safe, keep going.
Yep.
That is applying all of this other stuff, because at that moment that climber is looking at the Sherpa and they say, your access to all the people that have helped us to this point and your knowledge is something I trust, and in this moment I'm allowing you to apply it to my situation. That's perspective.
Yeah, who's ever had a client that wanted to bail on something because they got cold feet and all they needed was a conversation about their wants, their needs, how this fits into their dreams for the area they want to be in, and they really were just asking for permission to buy the house.
Yeah, or even sometimes as simply as it's as simple as saying it's going to be okay.
Yep.
Right, and that's it.
Yep.
That is applying your knowledge very, very well. Okay, what about this one?
So this is probably the most important portion of understanding your client is asking really great questions, right? That's what we do as agents, is we ask great questions that help people facilitate change in their thought processes and hopefully leads them to making great decisions.
Yeah, one of the ways that we can mess up being a trusted guide is we go from being the guide to being the story's hero. Right? Yeah. Because the client's the hero, we're the guide, right? We're the Sherpa. And what can happen is in the area of application, we are the ones, over the course of time in your career, as you grow your career, you do have almost all of the knowledge compared to your client. And you do have almost all the access compared to your client. And yet now when I go to apply it, I can come from a place of like, yeah, I've seen your situation 25 times. Let me just tell you what things are gonna, that's not good.
Yep, don't think you understand, seek to understand.
That's right. That's right. So if we zoom all the way back out, the whole reason for talking about these things are for a lot of people in our industry, closing for compensation is going to be new. For an even greater part of our industry, closing for compensation is going to be something that they have done when working with sellers, but not done working with buyers. And it will be different, right? Because there's not an asset right there that has that has value that's going to cause that to happen. It's going to be real money coming out of their pocket or out of their loan, and it's just going to be a new conversation. So we want you to be able to close for compensation, and we want you to be able to do it through this proven method of being the trusted guide. If you're the trusted guide, you get there through your knowledge, your access, and your application. And guys, my encouragement around this is not just say, okay, great, got it. It's to take a look and just say, okay, what area, Jake, am I lacking? Right? I say, you know what, I've been around for a long time, but honestly, I don't have the access that I need. Okay, so now that goes into your business plan. That's something you're talking to your coach about. That's something you're talking about with the rest of your team that's supporting you to be able to help you build that. Or maybe it's your market knowledge, or fill in the blank.
It's the next book you're going to read. It's the next person you're going to ask out to go for coffee, right? Because you want to know how they demonstrate or they learned to do that, right?
Yes, in your professional development, it's going to tell you the next steps that you need to take, because you know that it's going to lead you to be a trusted guide. And if you get there, you get to close for compensation as a natural outcome.
Yep.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for being along the ride for this webinar. I just really appreciate everybody showing up.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. A couple asks, guys, here at the end of the webinar. So if you guys would, we do this for free. We love you guys. We want to impact, empower, and encourage you in your real estate career, especially going into this next year. But it means the world to us for you to take literally 5 minutes and go to YouTube, like, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, pick one or the other, our Facebook page, Instagram, and just give us a shout out. Share this if you think that is valuable with other people. We just really, really appreciate that. And the second ask of the day is going to be this. Here's a QR code. And your feedback is important. We want to make sure that when we do these webinars, it's on target. It's absolutely helping you with your real estate career. And if you have any questions for us, we want you to hit us here. We're not going to do a question and answer because we have some places for that. And we're going to either address it by reaching out to you directly and say, hey, that's a great question, or addressing it in our podcast coming up here in season 2.
Yep. Yeah, so if you do have those questions, we want to respect your time as well. So that's a great place to put those and give us some feedback, even if it's that you don't like the bald guy over here. So that's great.
Or the guy who's covering his bald spot with his hat.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you again, and take care. We appreciate you.